My fiancée cheated with her ex, so I decided to keep quiet. Until I gave her a show that truly broke her spirit completely. I work at a certain large financial institution in the United States, and I'm not bragging, but I'm doing pretty great for myself with a lot of potential for growth, all of this while I'm still just 32 years old. During a conference I attended about 6 years ago, I chatted with a woman who was sitting beside me, and we got along so well. A few months after that, we started dating, and we've been together ever since. She just turned 30 a few days ago, but naturally, with the way things ended, there was no need to call or send wishes or anything of the sort. It was actually on her 29th birthday that I popped the question, and she said yes right away. There's a bit of a smile on my face looking back at that because it was one of the happiest days of my life, and I'm sure of hers, but that has soured a lot now, aged like unrefrigerated milk. Either way, I asked her to marry me, she said yes, and we were engaged. Happy days, am I right? I'm not certain if I'm the only one who's experienced this, but when you're with women who are too scared to talk about their sexual adventures with their friends, you, as a partner, might end up being the person they choose to start yapping to. I've had this happen in 2 separate relationships, and this was one of them. I think most men don't want to continually hear stories of all the men their girlfriend, fiancé, or wife has slept with. It's the same way I don't attempt to indulge any woman with details of people I've slept with. Anyway, it happened a few times before I finally told her that I really didn't care to hear all of her stories. But before that point, I had heard a lot about her most recent ex. I think it's fair to hear about exes in any new relationship, but I don't need the sexual details. The guy's name was Chris, and they had a pretty toxic relationship, but he was so good in bed, of course. We had slept together at this point, and I had to wonder whether I was that good in bed too, maybe fewer orgasms for me. Supposedly, the bedroom situation was what kept her in such a toxic relationship, which I'll admit was a red flag for me. But she was much younger and, by extension, naturally much stupider, so I let it slide. Anyway, that's the necessary background to what I have to say next. I heard a lot about Chris in the early stages of the relationship, but after a point, nothing else. At that point, I assumed she had finally gotten over him, and that was good enough for me. I stopped hearing about him about 2 years in, even sparingly. Let's fast forward to the post-engagement stage. My fiancée, Sandy, and I were already getting into the planning phase of things. We're both from relatively well-off homes. I wouldn't say my upbringing was wealthy or rich, but I've been told I'm out of touch before, and I accept my perspective might be a bit untrustworthy. Either way, both sets of parents wanted something relatively big. I was fine with a friends and family type of situation, no uncles or aunts I hadn't seen since I was a toddler, but everyone, including Sandy, wanted it to be spectacular, so I gave up and let them have their way. Now, here's where things get fun. Admittedly, this is where things went to hell for me back then, but as I said, I'm trying to be relatively lighthearted about the situation now. We were searching for a venue, and everyone wanted something in some kind of scenic location, like a private beach, a 10,000-year-old church, city hall, and so on. Fortunately for me, I made it clear that I was just fine finding an event space in the city, but I was told I didn't have vision. So, I told them they could do all the groundwork regarding the location. I wasn't going to stress myself over something I wasn't that concerned about. Regarding a venue, Sandy told me she was going to check out 3 of them with a friend, and I was totally fine with this. I mean, what was there to object to? She'd been with a friend to try out caterers and to look at dresses, so big deal. The day goes by, and she tells me she checked out a few places with this friend and that a certain old church was tickling her fancy quite nicely. She said she was going to check it out again in a few days with the same friend just to make sure she still felt the same way about it. I told her that was fine because, once again, I didn't care about the venue, and there was nothing I could see to make any aspect of the situation seem off. Eventually, she went back to check the venue out with her friend again, and the consensus was that it would be the place for her. So, we put our name down, and we'd have to pay a deposit within 30 days to book the day for ourselves. I eventually did, so the venue was set. Everything went swimmingly for the next few weeks. Wedding preparations continued along just fine, with additional things being settled, but for the most part, we hadn't put down too much money. I was very fortunate to have had things happen the way they did because one day, when my fiancée went to sign for a delivery, she left her phone on the kitchen island, and who do I see a notification from? Chris, with the message, "You there, babe?" I was very tempted to go through her messages, but she came back within seconds, holding the package she had picked up. I had no confirmation that it was the same Chris, but if there was another Chris calling her babe, I think that'd somehow be worse in its own special way. It had to be her ex. I was able to keep my emotions in check because I know how guys can be. He could be an ex being pushy or trying his luck with pet names and sexual innuendos, and she might be completely unreceptive to it. But as long as she had no idea I knew, I could wait for an opportunity to read more. That opportunity came about 10 days later when her friend came to pick her up to go look at flower arrangements. She just happened to forget her phone, which was perfect for me. There was a chance of her coming back to get her phone, but I wasn't going to waste the chance. So, I picked it up and went straight to her messaging app and looked for Chris. They had been talking. In fact, they had been talking a lot. There was a lot of regular stuff there, some talk about the wedding. He mentioned the venue and how beautiful it was, saying, we should go there again sometime outside of wedding duties. Ah, so he was the friend she went with. It only rushed back to me at that moment that she hadn't given me a name, and she usually did. She went with her ex of all people, the same Chris I hadn't heard of in ages, the same Chris who was so amazing in the bedroom. That spurred me to keep reading up and up and up. Yeah, and I got to the juicy bits. There was a lot of sexting, a lot, and it was as explicit as you could imagine. Well, it remained in text form for the most part, but there were pictures exchanged. I had to scroll far back, but it was right around the time they went to check out the old church the second time. Things were relatively sanitary from there down, besides pet names being thrown around. I couldn't tell if they had slept together, but she clearly didn't regret what they had done at that point because they were still talking actively. She was keeping the idiot on speed dial. That's when I heard the door unlock. At that moment, I considered putting her phone down. I really strongly considered acting like I wasn't doing anything, but you know what? I said to hell with that. I let her walk in on me holding her phone. As soon as we locked eyes, I saw her eyes widen, and she nearly sprinted toward me, trying to force a light-hearted, "What you doing?" When she got by my side, she saw Chris's chat open on her phone. I just looked up at her from where I was sitting. She struggled to find words to say. I could see her lips trying to move. "You went through my phone? Really? Are you serious?" Yes, she tried to make me the villain. I was so pissed off by the response, but all I did was laugh. I actually think it might have seemed like I was crazy because she took a step back. "I genuinely had no idea," I said to her. "Your lover sent a message when you went to sign for the package the other day. I saw the notification, and that's what spurred me to check your phone. I definitely had reason to do this, so don't even try to flip things on me because, if things had gone your way, I still would have been stupidly ignorant, and you would have continued to cheat on me with Chris." She started to mumble and tell me how it wasn't what it looked like. "I know you guys slept together," I said, bluffing hard but with a gut feeling. She denied it right away, but I stood my ground and told her to stop lying. She denied it again, and I placed her phone on the table and pushed it toward her. "I can't marry a liar." That's when she erupted into tears, wailing and telling me that it was just once. I laughed again. "Just once? You sexted with him, you guys are still in contact." "It was a mistake, baby, I made a mistake." She kept trying to touch me, but I kept swatting her away. That line was incredibly funny to me because it was only a mistake because I caught her. She would have kept going along with me and her ex on the side. She would have gotten married to me and probably kept sleeping with him. The lengths things could have gotten to had I not caught this was actually quite distressing to think about. I had no idea, and I had trusted her entirely before I just happened to see the message on her phone. It's riling me up right now thinking about it. I stood up, went to the bedroom, and grabbed her suitcase from the closet. She followed me, and once she saw me throwing her belongings into it, she started to wail again, which was really starting to piss me off. She kept begging me through tears, but I was really not in the mood for any of this. To imagine I was planning a wedding with her was crazy. "Give me the ring back." If you saw the look on her face at that point, it was like she had seen a ghost. I think, despite everything, it was at that point she actually realized how deeply she had messed up. She realized the actual consequences of her actions. My hand was outstretched in front of her for about 2 minutes before she finally took off the ring and placed it in my hand. She didn't even fight it, and that made me glad since I was starting to run out of patience at that point. After roughly shoving some of her stuff into the suitcase, I passed it to her and told her to get out of the house, which she did silently. That night, I locked the door, turned off all the lights, and I got drunk. The next morning, I woke up to several missed calls. There were some from her, some from her parents, and even some from my parents. Obviously, she had to have told them that I said the wedding was off, but I wondered if she had told them why. Almost definitely not, I thought at the time. Honestly, I wasn't in the mood to talk to anyone because there was nothing they'd do beyond either sympathizing with me or telling me that Sandy and I could work past things. I didn't want to have to put up with either of those. At a few points during the day, people came knocking on my door, but I was silent all through, and they eventually left. It wasn't until the next day that I created a group chat and added both sets of parents, Sandy, and her siblings. I wrote a very long message detailing absolutely everything that happened in as much detail as I cared to include at the moment. I didn't care that her parents were there or that mine were there. If they were going to have any input on the state of the soon-to-be cancelled wedding, they'd need to know exactly where I was coming from. So, yeah, I told them absolutely everything. The group chat was silent for a full hour after that, even though I could see that several of them had read the message, including my ex-fiancée. The first indication I had that someone had actually comprehended the entire thing was when my dad called me. I remember exactly what he said. "Son, I'm sorry. You made the right choice. It'll hurt, but it was the right choice." That stuck with me because a weaker man might have gone back to his vomit when the pain got too strong, but I never even considered it. Every time I remembered that line throughout the day, I got messages and calls, some of which I replied to, some of which I ignored. It was clear, though, that everyone had gotten the news, and there was no point in talking to me about it because my mind was set. That right there was pretty much the last time our wedding plans were so actively spoken about, and to my knowledge, her parents never tried to plead with me because I assumed they had the sense to know their daughter had messed up immensely. But the thing is, that wasn't enough for me. It really wasn't. I really had to make Sandy hurt the same way I did because calling off an engagement isn't real pain for her if it was merely the consequence of her actions. The first thing I wanted to do was get at Chris, but I really couldn't figure out how. I had no real dirt on him. I did hope that Sandy would want nothing to do with him, seeing as he was the root of all the embarrassment and pain she had gone through. After all, her immediate family all knew she was unfaithful, and that was satisfying. It probably would have helped if I'd come to ask for help here on how I could get back at Chris, but honestly, my mind wasn't in the right place at the time. I hope you can understand that. So, I let him go, despite not wanting to. However, the real person I needed to get back at was Sandy, and I had a plan. Here's the thing, we weren't together anymore. Anyone I chose to sleep with at this point was entirely fair game, even if it was her sister. No, I wasn't planning to sleep with her sister, I'm just making a point. The thing was, I wanted to make sure it would hurt her a lot. So, I had two options, sleep with the people she loves the most or sleep with the people she hates the most. Considering how our relationship had gone down the toilet, all her best friends would have been aware, and they'd be difficult terrain for me to navigate. However, the people she hates would be a different kind of evil. I mean, if you're reading this, think about it. How would you feel if your partner slept with the annoying guy at the office who you absolutely hate? It would make you hate him even more, but it would also hurt a lot because you're sharing your partner with the last person on earth you would have chosen. That was my reasoning. So, I had to go through my head to figure out a few female coworkers my fiancé had complained about a lot. Top of the list was a Sophia, who she hated because she thinks she's all that, which was probably girl speak for feeling threatened by her. That might have meant she was attractive, and I was excited to find out. There was a college classmate called Melissa. They used to be friends, but then Melissa slept with one of my ex-fiancé's exes, and they had a huge falling out. Sandy hated her ever since. Finally, I could recall a Japanese girl called Toki, and Sandy explicitly said, "I hate her because she tries to act all dainty and cute, and the men drool over her like fools." My list had a few other names, but let me jump ahead and tell you that I either couldn't do enough digging to find them online or I failed to seal the deal. Anyway, Sophia wasn't hard to find. They work at the same place, so LinkedIn helped me out immensely in that regard. From there, I was able to find her Instagram account, and I messaged her from there. I use Instagram a lot, and I'm not trying to be conceited, but it's a pretty attractive page to those who like slightly lavish lifestyles. I had a lot of cool outfits, my Audi showed up a few times, and a few vacations I had been on also made appearances. When I followed Sophia, she followed right back within minutes, and I sent her a message. I played my usual slick talk, and I could clearly tell she was into me. This went on for a day more before I asked her if she'd like to go on a date, and she said yes. I made it very clear that day to take several photos of her and with her, and I made sure she looked amazing in each one. That date had a happy ending, if I say so myself. The next one was Melissa. Now, at this point, I realized I was doing a lot in the name of revenge, but I was committed. Melissa lived 2 states over, but I still sent her a message on Instagram anyway. The problem was, and I didn't bargain for this, she recognized me. My fiancé and her hadn't kept in touch, but I guess Melissa made it a habit to keep occasional tabs on her life out of hate or something, and I certainly showed up on my fiancé's social media. I was found out, so I went for an honest route. I let Melissa know I had split with Sandy, and she said, "Good, I hated her." The next message, "Oh, I'm sorry, I know you must still love her." I told Melissa that no, I did not still love her, And I was looking exactly for someone who I could share my hate with. She started a voice call with me immediately after that message. I did find that odd. We got to talking about my ex-fiancée, and at one point, I just said out loud, I want to get back at her. Melissa, apparently a chronic homewrecker, said, you could sleep with me. At this point, I could see why Sandy hated her back then, but this just worked in my favor. Setting things up was incredibly easy. I flew over on a weekend. Melissa and I went bowling and sightseeing in her city, again with lots of photographic evidence for my devious purposes. Then we went to her house and had some fun. She even let me take some very suggestive photos of her. Apparently, the hate between the two of them was a lot deeper than I knew. Finally, it was time for Toki. I was lucky with this one because I found her on Tinder. I had no idea what she looked like, but the name Toki was certainly not common for the area I lived in. I matched with her right away and sent her a message. She was pretty slow with her replies, and when I proposed a date, she said she wouldn't be available for the week. It took a while for me to seal the deal, especially because it eventually took 3 dates to get anything to happen. I got my photos, though, of course, all taken with her fully aware. It took exactly 6 weeks for me to finalize all of this, and I won't lie, I really wondered whether I was a psychopath to go through all that trouble to get back at someone. But I knew I'd finally feel a lot better at the end of it, so I brushed those feelings aside. I texted Sandy out of the blue one day, and it took her ages to reply, but she eventually did. We got through some very awkward pleasantries, but I told her I wanted to meet up with her, though I didn't tell her what for, and I'm certain that got her hopes up. She told me she could be ready in 15 minutes, but I insisted that we meet in 3 hours because I really wanted to drive her crazy with the suspense. No, we were not getting back together, but I bet that's what she thought. Finally, the time came, and I met her at a park. She was there before I got there, which was unsurprising since I had been as sluggish as possible while preparing. She stood to hug me, and I accepted it. It was easier to get her hopes up if I wasn't too cold. We went through a bunch of dry pleasantries before I took out my phone and sent her a bunch of media. I told her to take a look. Her straight face melted into a frown as she opened the photos I had sent her. The first face she saw was Sophia, and she said, "Why are you showing me this?" But before I could answer, she scrolled to the next picture, which had me and Sophia in it. Then she kept scrolling past the Sophia pictures to the Toki ones. Toki was a lot of fun to be around, I made sure to say that extremely casually. I saw tears welling up in Sandy's eyes, and she kept looking. Then she saw Melissa, first a video of me and Melissa bowling, then the more explicit one. She literally watched that video loop 3 times before I said, "None of these women were as bad as you made them seem. In fact, they were all a lot better than you, especially where it mattered most." She flipped out. She stood up and started howling expletives at me. She kept pointing her finger at me aggressively, and I wondered if she was going to feel the urge to hit me at any point, but she just kept screaming and shouting about how I was a scumbag and a piece of crap and so on. Honestly, I kind of zoned out because I was reveling in the way she was shaking with rage. At one point, she said, "You made it seem like you're a saint, but you're worse than me." I stopped her there. I wasn't the one who reconnected with my ex, slept with him, kept having charged conversations with him, and did all that while I was engaged. I'm not engaged now, and that's because of everything you did. So, if you're mad, you can only be mad at yourself. I said all of that calmly and stood up. Really, you can only be mad at yourself, Sandy. This was simply what you deserved. She started to cry again, and this time, she looked truly broken, but that was it for me. Seeing that look was closure. I truly felt satisfied that I had done what I needed to do. Since then, I haven't heard from her, even when she turned 30, but to be honest, I prefer things that way. I don't know if this is practical advice for anyone, but I don't think any woman is beyond cheating because that's what I thought about my ex-fiancée, and I was proven wrong. If you can sign a prenup, please do, because I was lucky to get out of my situation before marriage. All I can really say as a parting note is that you should always stay vigilant. If you need to check their phone, do it, especially if you have reasonable suspicion. It's not worth it living with someone who's giving you trust issues. I managed to get out of my situation, and for the sake of all you younger and even older men out there, I hope you do too. First off, your reaction to stumbling upon your fiancé's affair is both unexpected and oddly amusing. Most people would have been devastated, but you laugh it off like it's just another day at the office. Your nonchalant attitude toward the whole situation is both hilarious and slightly unnerving. I can't tell if we should be best friends or if you're my worst nightmare. But then your revenge plot kicks into high gear, and boy, is it something else. I mean, hooking up with not 1, not 2, but 3 women your ex despises? That's some next level payback right there. You know what they say, keep friends close and enemies closer.